Alright, so substance use in early adulthood. We see that people tend to use and abuse alcohol, drugs, cigarettes at the most between 19 and 22 years old, and then it tends to go down. And really, that's when people are in college, right? And so when people are smoking, drinking, doing drugs, kind of going crazy. Even if you don't go to college, you're you're moving out, you're hanging out with people, you got your own money, you can afford to buy alcohol, you're old enough to buy alcohol. You have people that you know that are old enough to buy alcohol. So about 20% of 21 to 25-year-olds, we would say, are actual substance abusers. So they, get to the point where they are abusing it. They are using it to the point where they are feeling like they need it to be able to get through their days, right? And that's 1 in 5. That's a lot going on there. Cigarettes and alcohol being the most common substances that are abused, but also drugs like marijuana, stimulant medications, illegal use of prescription drugs like OxyContin, and then all of the kind of party drugs, MDMA, ketamine, things like that. All right, our sexual activity in early adulthood. Pretty much everyone's had sex. If you waited to get married, you're now married and you're now having sex. So everybody's doing it. Most sex is in a relationship, right? We're not going around just having crazy sex orgies. 70% of adults have only had one partner in the past year. So if not married, you're still just pretty much in pretty long-term relationships. Partners tend to be very similar to each other. We seek out people that are like us because that kind of reinforces who we are. Sex tends to become infrequent to only about a third having it twice a week or more. We have sex more in our 20s, then it starts to go down. Why? Because we have kids and we've been with the same person, and our dopamine doesn't spike as much. But most people are satisfied with their relationships. If you are the type of person who likes to have sex 3 times a week, then you find someone who also likes to do that. If you're twice a month on the 1st and the 15th when you get your paycheck, then you're happy with that. And almost everyone is in relationships during this time period. If you're homosexual, bisexual, during this time, acceptance is growing of people who say it's okay to be gay. Good for them. If you are. A lot of people, even if they're kind of against, gayness morally, do say they support civil rights for people. They shouldn't have less rights just because they're gay. So about 3% of men and 1.5% of women report being gay, but a lot of people who are gay don't actually report it, so those numbers are way off. It's estimated that we have about 5 to 6% of the population is homosexual in some way. As far as relationship goes, similar behavior to heterosexual couples, right? You're getting into couples, you're getting married, or thinking about having kids. However, if you are homosexual or bisexual, you do tend to live in big metropolitan type cities or college towns where things tend to be more liberal and supportive. At this age, you are more likely to have STIs. So here in the United States, where we like to be number 1 in all bad things, 1 in 4 people will have an STI between the ages of 16 and 24. So at the early part of early adulthood, pretty much 25% of the people you're hanging out with have had an STI or STD or have one currently. So we have kind of the treatable STIs like chlamydia and gonorrhea that we can get rid of with antibiotics. And then we have the viral STIs that once you have, you just kind of have it forever. And those are the ones that begin with an H. Because with an H, you kind of have it forever. So herpes, hepatitis, HIV, and human papillomavirus, HPV, they stay with you. They don't go away. And then obviously if you have HIV, that can turn into AIDS, which you will most likely die from. However, we do have a lot of medications now that stop HIV from turning into full-blown AIDS. And like we learned in the last couple of chapters, most people who are HIV positive in their early 20s became infected when they were a teenager and not using protection. A problem that we have a lot of also here in America is that we have a very high college dropout rate. So between 30 and 50% in any given year of college students will drop out, which is huge. It's a very large college dropout rate. Why are so many people dropping out of college? Different reasons. One, personal factors. Not being prepared is a huge one. Our high school, our graduating seniors are very, very underprepared to go to college, right? Even here in, Frisco ISD, where we have, quote unquote, the best schools around, and we have these great 99 and 100% graduation rates from high school, our college preparedness rates are around 40%. Only 40% of our graduated seniors in Frisco, one of the best places in the world to raise your kids, only has our kids at about 40% ready for college, to actually take college classes. We are not preparing them for college. A lot of kids aren't motivated. I have a lot of kids in my Learning Frameworks class who I asked them in one of their projects, tell me why you're in college. And most of them are like, well, my parents are making me. My parents will kick me out if I don't go to college. I guess I'm supposed to go. They're not actually motivated to go. They don't want to go. They're not thinking that it's important to go to college. And some people just don't have the skills necessary. It takes, a good skill set to survive in college. You have to take good notes. You have to study well. You have to be organized. You have to have good time management skills, right? And they lack those, and they aren't taught those. Financial problems are also a really big reason why people drop out. College is expensive, and it's gotten significantly more expensive over time. When my parents, were going to college in the 60s, you could work a job over the summer and pay your entire tuition for the year. And that's not the case at all anymore, as you all know about student loan debt. If you're low SES, your likelihood of being able to support yourself through college is extremely low. And the institutional factors that kick in, not a lot of help for you if you're not prepared for college. There's college has historically just been this very white male environment, with talking about white male history and white male studies, and there's a degree of cultural disrespect there for women and minorities that can be overwhelming at times, and that gets people to drop out as well. But a lot of it has to also do with, if you're struggling at a lot of college, there's not a lot of things that can help you, especially in places like the state of Texas wants us to get rid of all remedial education in college, and a lot of our students rely on remedial education, and that's being taken away. All right, so when you are deciding what you want to do when you grow up, we go through these kind of periods of vocational development. We have fantasy periods, tentative periods, and the realistic period. So the fantasy period is pretty much when we feel like, I can be anything. I'm going to be a space cowboy. Okay, sure. Then we get to the more tentative period where we realize that, okay, maybe I can't be anything. I need to maybe think about what I'm good at or kind of want to do. And then we're going to move into more of a realistic period where we say, okay, no, I actually do need to figure out what I'm going to do. This is getting real. I need to know what I'm going to do to make a living. So in our realistic period, we go through periods of exploration and then into crystallization. So in exploration stage, we're kind of feeling out what's out there. What am I good at? What do I like doing? And college is a really good place to be able to do this, right? You take different classes, you see which ones kind of call to you, what you like. It's also a good time to do internships and things like that to kind of explore, what do I want to do? What kind of thing can I see myself doing for the next 30 or so years? And once you kind of figure out, okay, I really like math, accounting's I really kind of enjoy this, then you start to go through this crystallization period where you really start to narrow down, okay, this is exactly what I want to do. So since a lot of you want to be, nurses, you probably, maybe you never knew you exactly wanted to be a nurse. You knew you wanted to help people in some way. You wanted to be in some sort of, medical profession. And then you decided on nursing, and then you're going to further crystallize down to exactly what type of nursing do you want to go into, exactly what kind of degree do you want to have. Are you going to have just your, your RN degree? Are you going to get your BSN degree? Are you going to become a nurse practitioner, right? So we're going to crystallize down into exactly, where you're going to go to. So things that influence your vocational choice, right? What am I going to do? One thing is, your personality. We do know that different personalities do choose, the same types of careers. So people in certain careers tend to have very similar personalities, right? So firefighters tend to have very similar personalities. Surgeons tend to have very similar personalities. Accountants tend to have very similar personalities. So your personality to some extent kind of pulls you towards different career choices. Then, of course, your family influences, right? There's a reason why you have these people who, like, everyone in their family has been firefighters. Everyone in their family has been in the military. Everyone in their family has been, police officers, right? The family kind of influences, like, this is what you should do. Or everyone's been lawyers. Everyone's been doctors. Like, you're going to go and do this. This is what's going to happen. So we see a little bit when we talk about identity development from the last chapter, right? And being that identity foreclosure, where you just are kind of told this is the career you're going to go into, and you never really get to think about it. Teachers can influence you. Maybe you have a really great teacher that, shows you that you're really good at something, or, in college you have a professor that, teaches this thing, and you're just like, oh my God, I love this, subject matter now. I'm going to go, start doing this thing. Gender stereotypes also influence to some extent, right? There's still a bit of, that boys don't belong in some things and girls don't belong in others, right? It's like we still have a very big gap with very few women going into things like math-related careers and engineering. Even though girls outperform boys in math all the way through high school and college, we see less girls doing math type majors and going into math type fields. We also see, more females going into nursing while more males are, applying to medical school, right? Because men are doctors and girls are nurses, which is ridiculous. That's been going away a lot lately, thankfully. But we'll still say things like a male nurse. Like, why do we don't say a female nurse? We say nurse or male nurse, because there's still that weird kind of gender stereotype, which is ridiculous. And also just access to vocational information, right? You ask, a bunch of first graders, what are you going to do? You're going to get just a handful of answers, right? Because no first grader, when you ask them what do you want to be when you grow up, says, I want to be a middle management account executive. They don't know what that is. So having access to, here's all these different things you can do. There's so much more than doctor, lawyer, whatever, space cowboy out there. There's a million different things. So having access to that is important. For people who aren't going to college, we do see that here in the United States, our high school graduates are not prepared to go into work. We used to prepare students. Back in the 50s and 60s, we used to do a really good job of preparing students for going into the workforce, because a lot of jobs did not require a college degree. They required a high school diploma. And you went into clerical type jobs. You used to need a high school diploma to be an accountant, right? That isn't true anymore. So as we've upped the kind of ante for the degree that you need to do certain jobs, we're leaving behind these kids who will only graduate from high school and won't go to college, because college really is not for everyone. We have a lack of vocational placement and counseling for our non-college bound kids, right? High schools just push over and over and over again, go to college, go to college, go to college, go to college. And there's a big segment of the population that won't go to college, or who will drop out because it isn't for them. We need to have more things for these kids. We need to have more vocational opportunities for these kids. There's not a lot of jobs for people who just have a high school diploma, and those jobs are low paying and usually part-time and don't come with benefits. Work study programs and apprenticeships are great because you're teaching a trade to a kid. We don't have very many of them in the United States, though. Europe, of course, has the model system. We are not Europe.